Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Pinball Arcade. So let's go to the first 70s era table, Fireball, and hop in here. It takes a little while to load in, I've noticed. Fireball came out in 1972. It's a highly collectible fantasy-themed pinball table that was designed by Ted Zale. This innovative game included ball-saving features such as the flipper zipper and the kickback kicker. In the left out lane, the flipper zipper moves the flippers to block the center drain, and the kickback kicker prevents the ball from draining down the left out lane. You're more likely to drain out the left out lane in most tables than the right. The middle of the playfield features a whirlwind spinner, which sends the ball flying in random directions. Locked balls, bonuses 2 and 3 multi-ball put this game way ahead of its time. Fireball is a lightning storm of scoring action. 3,815 units of this table were produced. So yeah, no longer are we going to have just a monkey banging a bell when we score 100. Instead, we're going to score 100 every time we hit a bumper. And this does look like a much more ambitious pinball table by this point than what we had before. Although, still, by more modern tables, the center is fairly empty and it is fairly limited. It seems to also have 4 players. I hate to try a different skin, but I'm going to try a different skin. Let's see if that actually affects anything. Probably does, horribly. I imagine more than not. Now, we can see there's no, like, music playing in the background for a lot of these tables. And that will be the case for quite a while. I'm not liking that you can't nudge the plunger forward with the right stick. Interesting. How do you flipper zipper? Oh, there we go. They did move in. Interesting. That's an interesting concept. But what I guess it effectively means is that the flippers are always a little bit further behind. Oh, and if you skin one ball, you end up skinning multiple balls. And there's an interesting drain lane back into the plunger. I am definitely not a fan of the concept of having a spinning thing so close to the front of the, wow, so close to the front of the playfield. If you're going to have a spinning sandpaper section, I would like to see it much further to the back. We can see in this case, though, that there is also really still fairly small amounts of scoring. Even though the bumpers say 100, they seem not to really be getting massive amounts of 100s. I'm fairly certain there's something back there to lock the ball. So you've got a 2-ball multi-ball. Why is there an area back there if it doesn't? It's quite the sweet chime that the bells and the bumpers like to make. Yeah, I can't change the camera angle. Well, maybe the camera angle changes with different buttons. I guess it does. But I really wish there was a way to pause the game and fly the camera around and look at the table. And I guess that's what the instructions are for. And see, this is a great example of how just having a capability to lock one ball potentially gives you that opportunity to have a secondary ball always ready to play. There we go. And just through a couple of games we've managed to accomplish a few things. So I guess the real question would be, what unlocks the multi-ball? Guess that does. These flippers are shorter than what we see in most tables. Well, just drain all three of them at once. I'm at 46,000 already on the score, and it'd be kind of hard for them to want you to get it all the way to like 999 or higher. I imagine a game like this would easily just roll over the score anyways. This definitely feels like pinball. One of the things I don't think you can do, unfortunately, is unlock all the wizard goals. See, that put me at 3 out of the third place just in the first game. Or second game. Actually, we should just check. We're already at the wizard goals. Activate a 3-ball multi-ball. Score 5,000 Odin values. Score 3,000 right alley. Score 40,000 points on one ball. Score 100,000 points in total. So even they have it set where they're asking for a much higher score than even the table expected a player to play. Which, in all fairness, if this was a 70s table, it did take decades, I imagine, for most pinball wizards out there to become particularly excellent at playing pinball. And certainly, a game in the 70s, there would have been a lot more time to practice on pinball with less distractions. It was interesting how the camera followed the ball, even though the ball really wasn't going to be able to go anywhere. I definitely am liking this table more than the 60s table. This definitely feels like a good early table to hone your skills on and say, well, this isn't going to be super complicated, it's not going to be talking to you, it's not going to be making a bunch of sound effects, it's not going to have super crazy multi-balls, it's not going to unlock mini-game chapters or anything like that. When you get to later pinball tables, they start to really go crazy with very bespoke and discrete rules for different game modes, and unlocking, even unlocking the mode, let alone knowing what you're supposed to do in the mode, can be fairly cryptic. And either you're supposed to have figured it out through trial by error, or somebody was supposed to have told you. It's hardly like there was a ridiculous amount of instructions on any pinball table I've ever seen. And for the most part, pinball does boil down to the little kids' instructions, which is just keep the pinball on the playfield for as long as possible. Sure, an expert could probably get millions and millions of points in 5 minutes compared to someone who just was able to keep the ball moving for an hour. But the vast majority of people will do just fine keeping the ball moving for an hour, and by that hour they'd probably be tired of playing pinball. Like, there is certainly an exhaustion factor that can happen with a bad table, or with just even a good table. If you're going to stand in front of a table and you're leaning over a table and you're trying your very best, you can very well physically exert yourself. So pinball, compared to sitting in a chair playing a video game with a controller in your hands, it does require a small bit of stamina, not anywhere close to actually doing a real sport, a real physical sport. It is very interesting that you have this case where, I want to see if we can change this. Yeah, the sound effects. Let me come back here and see if any music actually does play. Nope, I don't think it will. Like, it's interesting that you've got sound effects for electrodes and electromagnets holding the table, holding the ball in place. That is probably fairly accurate to what it really sounded like, but you could see where they might have wanted to go for a more idealized idea. Yeah, I'm not hearing any music. So I want to turn off the... Yeah, there's just no table music playing right now. What would happen if we turned down the room brightness and turned up the bulb brightness? This would be kind of the equivalent of putting in an LEDs to replace regular bulbs. Yeah, I don't think that really looks particularly good. And the idea that you could play pinball in the middle of the night and not wake someone up is kind of a silly idea. Also, you can see how that sand table loses a ton of appearance when you do something like that. So then I suppose the question would be, what if we just cranked up the light just for those visually impaired people? I still don't think that would be right. So while it's nice you can adjust the brightness, pretty much just leave it all the same. Is probably your best bet. And I guess we'll play till we hit 30 minutes, or until 30 minutes have passed and we've unlocked the wizard goals. Probably we'll just play till 30 minutes. I think that makes the most sense. There will definitely be some tables that I just kind of suck at. Like, this is not particularly the easiest of tables. With even greats in the 1970s, you're still going to hit a level of imperfection. Not to say that any pinball table is perfect, but you could easily see in this case, if the flippers were normal size and still had a flipper zipper, that would probably be a little bit nicer. If there was a central peg anyways, so that it doesn't drain. If the left out lane was a little bit differently designed so that you're less likely to drain out the left lane. There's clearly some tweaks here. The flippers could be stronger, almost always the case. A lot of pinball tables, that's very adjustable too. You can either hardwire flippers to not be as strong as they should be, or you can program them or adjust them so they're not as strong. Which you certainly could get fairly unfair with that, because if you literally cannot get the pinball to the top of the table, then there's no way that you're actually going to be able to succeed. And then in the old days, it probably was a lot more scummy trying to get money off of pinball tables and scam people. Nowadays, I don't know if there's much of a real reason to do that. If anything, you want people to play pinball as long as possible. There isn't going to be long lines of people wanting to play, and usually it's going to be little kids that you just want to have a good time. Like, whether you put a pinball table in, say, a bowling alley or an arcade or even a bar, each of those locations are not particularly trying to scam you out of money via the pinball tables or the video game machines. Those are extras just to keep you around and busy and entertained. Bars and bowling alleys are trying to sell you on food sales and drink sales, and that they're already, bowling alleys are going to get a large fee for the lane rentals. Arcades are the only ones that are usually specifically getting all their money from video games, but they managed to, until they stopped making profits, they managed to make profits decently by having usually only one person work there for minimum wage, and if not less, and convincing people to convert quarters into tickets for worthless toys. There is a host of a TV show called Bar Rescue named John Taffer, and one of the things he sells is the idea of bars in particular not being about selling the alcohol, but about selling an experience. And people will pay a lot more to have a good experience than they will to have a good cocktail. I don't know if arcades ever figured that concept out, or if that concept would even be true specifically for arcades, but that very well may have been the reason why arcades kind of failed to maintain. Because arcades continuously got worse and worse as far as their upkeep and as far as new games, because fewer and fewer arcade machines were being made. It literally would be nothing to be able to have a computer play the newest game in an arcade and turn it into like what would be a good example? Computer cafe. Yeah, if arcades had turned into half computer arcades where people were playing things like StarCraft or Fortnite, for instance, these days, that would work fairly well. So we would need to get 40,000 in one ball and score over 100,000 points. And leaderboards. No, I guess you can't see the overall leaderboards. And the achievements just popped up the Steam overlay. Which that's not what I wanted, particularly since Steam overlay is... How do you even turn off the Steam overlay? I hate this thing is even on. It's like Shift Tab, isn't it? Yeah. Well, don't click achievements unless you want to see the Steam overlay. Which you didn't see, thank goodness, but... I will say Pinball FX did seemingly do a better job of integrating like motivations to continue playing, and they give just like an overall Pinball Wizard score where Pinball Arcade doesn't. It keeps each score separate for how successful you've been per table, which I could no, I don't really see an argument for that, because the Pinball FX Wizard score is an extra score on top of table scores. The only problem is that the Pinball FX2, last time I played it, just did not feel like it controlled very well. Whereas this feels pretty good. Like, I am using a controller, I am pulling flippers instead of pressing buttons on the side of the table. It's probably been at least 10 years since last time I actually touched a real pinball table, so it's fairly easy to not have that tactile memory fresh in my mind. But yeah, this feels like I'm fairly close to playing real pinball. You could try to make a custom controller that was just the front, say, foot of a pinball table and have it in front of you and then look at a monitor. I don't think that's really worth it. Even when you make a virtual pinball table that just has a monitor on it, you then have invested so much that you kind of need it to be able to have a controller plug into it so you can at least play shoot 'em up games, which would be somewhat similar to the right ratio. And ideally you would want to be able to play other arcade games on a pinball table, or a virtual pinball table screen. If you're going to be emulating, you might as well emulate a bunch of things. But the Walmart brand at games, I don't think it actually is a Walmart brand, but it's likely you would buy a Walmart. It is a Walmartified product for sure. It is a cheap, scaled down version of an arcade cabinet that runs emulated games. Not particularly well, I imagine, not particularly with very good buttons. But the at games cabinets are cheap enough where you can potentially have a real pinball table and an at games console for all the arcades. And it would feel much better playing on the at games than it would feel to play it on a pinball table or a virtual pinball table. But yeah. I imagine even if I was to try and play an old arcade game, if I started to stand in front of one, since it's been probably 2 or 3 decades since I last touched an arcade game, I probably would recognize very quickly that they were very small and like at the height for little kids more, or teenagers. But looking through adult eyes at an arcade cabinet would probably be a awkward experience. And the AT games in particular are designed to be particularly small for like 9-10-year-olds compared to what it felt like, where it was more of a where arcade games felt like they were products more for teenagers before. But I could be wrong about that. Again, that could be just my memory playing tricks on me. Yeah, I don't think for the rest of the series I'll be changing the skin of the pinball. That's just a horrible idea. But I mean, what else do? Do you make little Miis like the Nintendo did for the Wii? Or avatars like Xbox and PlayStation eventually came up with? Did PlayStation ever have avatars? They must have at some point, and all of that's been pretty much abandoned at this point. Although I believe the Xbox still can have you make avatars if you want. They just don't really get integrated into any game. And it is nice that Pinball Arcade, while it did have microtransactions for specific tables, at a certain point, I don't even think you really fairly can classify that as a microtransaction as much as you classify it as a DLC purchase of an actual transaction. They never got crazy and tried to charge you $0.25 for a play, or tried to sell a ridiculous amount of skins. If anything, I think a lot of these skins were bonus bundled in to the into purchasing of actual tables, so they were just little extra things. They certainly could have made more flyers and posters and tried to license t-shirts and like a whole selection of a Hot Topic catalog or something like that, lava lamps, and try to embrace the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and let you decorate the sides of these rooms. But those all would just be distractions, and whoever would be in charge of creating that content would be taken away from making sure the pinball tables themselves play well. I could see an argument for not having the room show at all and just having it as a black wall. Like, that probably wouldn't upset too many people, but yeah. There's seemingly no options there. It does have a nice little countdown when you pause the game, so you don't immediately lose if you pause. That's something real pinball would never have allowed you to do, and you would have had to have been able to trap the pinball in one of the flippers, and these flippers are too short to actually pull that trick off. I guess the flipper zipper gets activated by hitting one thing and gets deactivated by hitting another. It feels like you might get a little randomization on the plungers, which that wouldn't really be fair. So I'd hope that wouldn't be the case. This is obviously an older table by how easy it is to get a 3-ball multiplayer. Multi-ball? Not multiplayer. But I don't hate that by any means. The wizard goal of getting over 100,000 score, though, seems to be fairly difficult here. Well, there was something I wanted to check. Generally, I guess the instructions are broken down more than I thought. I wanted to see if there was a flyer we could look at. Yep. Yeah, the flyer frankly looks like it was printed in the format of a record sleeve. And how does one scale up? I guess you do that. Yep. And that background noise. This is another kind of great example of what I imagine the table actually looked like and how they've kind of touched it up. Yeah. You would have a hard time though scaling this up high enough to be able to read this if you're looking at a TV 10 feet away like I am. Hopefully what we will run into is a case where we start getting more music in the background for the tables, although some of it may be licensed. This is also a series that could easily get content ID'd a lot. So we're making decent progress. Let's see. And then ball control, tiltometer, table exploration. Alright, so Pro Menu does let you explore the table, but it doesn't let you zoom in or anything. But it does let you tilt, at least. This is kind of what you need always, is the ability to fly in and just see how high res each of these things really is. And sure, by an RTX 2080 scale, it looks kind of old. Some of these screws and bolts don't look quite as round as you might expect them to. Although, in all fairness, who really cares? Because you're going to be zoomed out so much. Anyways, it seems like the camera tilts at a bit of a pivot once you get high enough so you can see everything. But for instance, if I wanted to get the top left of this backboard, you can't see that. You can look at the table and see how the table seemingly has water damage on not the table but the ground. You can see slight reflections but no reflections of people. That's a nice feature. And you have like pro tips, IFPA pro tips, which apparently are different than the instructions, which shows 151 of those. So how does one control the ball? Hmm. 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 Yeah, if there's a way to control the ball, I can't figure out what it is. Like, you can play with a mouse, and you can try and... But... Hmm. Oh, okay. So look at this. I've got the D-pad literally controls the ball. So if you can do that, then you don't have to do anything. So you're effectively doing a you're effectively doing what you could do with a magnet, although in all fairness I don't know how many people actually did ever bother to do that. So what would be interesting here is what ball do you control when you release a multi-ball. Then I guess the real question is, if you can just cheat like this, you probably can get all the wizard goals, unless it's just gonna straight up and say, no, you can't cheat like this and that count for the wizard goals. That would be ridiculous. But I mean, I suppose it doesn't really hurt anybody other than yourself, as far as... Yeah. Seemingly they both now are going in the general direction that I was pushing. The thing particularly though is going to be that if you are pressing upwards to get it to go upwards, then you're unlikely at that point to really let the multi-ball really happen like it normally would. Instead, you're fairly likely to just push it back into the place it just fell out of and lock the ball back up. Let's see, we're about to hit 40,000. Kind of wish the ball was a little bit more sensitive, or that I could instead control the ball with the left stick and nudge with the right stick, but I guess nudging with the left stick is probably more important. Honestly, a modern controller, Xbox or PlayStation, is not particularly well suited for pinball controls anyways. You can use the triggers just fine, but that's about all I can say there. The tilt features in a PlayStation 5 might work slightly better, but yeah, I don't feel like tilting is the right response for controlling pinball either. With this like magnetic control, you still run into a scenario where a lot of nothing can happen in any second, because the ball's just not really going anywhere it's supposed to be or hitting anything. Pinball only works if the pinball is actually bouncing around something. I feel like I've already gotten the goal of 40,000 in one ball. If not, it would be quite the extra time. See, I don't even know if this table doubles your scores when you have two balls in play or not. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pro just unlocks you from accomplishing any of the wizard features. That would be fair enough too. And I wouldn't be surprised if this actually stops you from even getting a high score this way. I could definitely see an argument in both camps, where one way they could say, well, you just let them cheat and let them get all the achievements. They paid for it. They paid a decently high price for the tables anyways to get the pro modes unlocked. And I assume that would just be local scores, not the overall score. But then that was definitely a problem with Pinball FX too, is that a lot of the scoreboards were just horribly hacked and cheaters galore. And that's true for most scoreboards, is that you can just dismiss the first 10 to 100 to 1,000 people as having hacked and cheated the scores in there. Even if it's not the case, you can pretty well sleep well at night assuming that that is the case, instead of trying to compete with some expert out there that happens to just be way better than you ever will be. This is killing my thumb, so I just want to get this up to 100,000 just to see what a score overruns. Ideally, we find out this doesn't unlock any of the wizard goals. It would be nice for achievements wise, but it would just mean I would have to spend more time dragging around my thumb. And like, I've literally now switched over to using my forefinger on my other hand, my pointer finger instead. Because of just how incredibly painful the thumb has been. Yeah, we've rolled over. Alright, so let's just play regular now. In fact, probably not worth it even to play regular. I probably should just go ahead and let all the balls drain out. Like, one case scenario, I invalidated anything because I turned on the pro table functions. One case scenario, I didn't invalidate anything, and then theoretically I'd have to use the magnets to get every single achievement. And frankly, I'd be happier if you could cheat slightly, but I wouldn't be upset if they said no, you can't cheat either. You do have this major danger in a game like this where you will lose interest in it fairly quickly, even if you are a fan of pinball like me. I definitely put all these tables that I purchased after I spotlighted the free tables. I just purchased them and didn't ever even get around to launching it. So I lost interest before even playing the games. Once the wizard goals have all been done, it totally would make sense that you would potentially not have any real motivating factor other than the pure desire to play pinball. And honestly, the pure desire from nostalgia to play a pinball table probably only boils down to the 3 to 5 pinball tables you've actually played when you were young, if that much. It's not going to go as far as Fireball. Interesting. That put me at 135,000. Okay. But did it give me the wizard goals? No. So let's see. It was score 40,000 points on one ball. I definitely did that. Score 100,000 plus points. And I assume, yeah. I guess there's nothing else to do. We'll move on to the next table in the next recording. You can definitely, I guess, figure out why some of these tables don't have pro modes too. It's probably fairly pointless to add those extra features. Yeah, not super upset that that didn't count. That saves me a lot of time and a lot of grinding. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.